Good morning, sir.
Yeah, Karan, Kunal, Malyadri, Nusrat, Purna, Rahul, Ravi, Supriya, Surender, and Vaiba. Yeah, cool. Okay, just a minute. Yeah, so we started with Spring Core module, right? Spring Core, which is the core framework for Spring. Once understanding with the Spring Core framework, we could able to learn other modules. Okay, so Spring Core is having multiple features that we need to learn first. Okay, yeah, so out of which the first feature is IOC containers. So it came up with self-containers. IOC came with, or Spring Core came with self-containers, and using that containers we could able to manage many things, out of which one is important: dependency injection. Okay, so when you implement a application using Spring, all our classes are going to implement as simple POJOs. We implement all our classes as POJOs when you implement application using Spring. To run that POJO classes, right, we use IOC containers. Okay, and to do communication between POJOs, we do dependency injection. Okay, so I'll give an example here. So I have a request from a page. I have a request from a view. If you consider, I have a request like create student. I have a request like create student. So when I submit this request, to handle my request, I need some controller class, student controller. As I said, this should be a POJO class. To read your data, this should be a POJO class, and your business also can be a POJO. Student business class can be a simple again POJO class. And if you want to do CRUD operations, we write some kind of DAO. Again, it should be a POJO class. So now I have multiple POJO classes here, and I have many methods in these classes. When I call a create student request, the request will go to my controller. Controller should able to call your business, and your business should able to call DAO. This is how the request chain will go from one class to another class. This is how the request chain will go from one class to. Am I not audible, guys? Everybody able to hear?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
your voice is very much
Yes, yes, no.
Okay, cool. So this is how the request flow will go in general implementation, right? This is how the request flow will go. Okay. Now who will create these objects? These POJO classes objects, who will create? And I want to establish connection between these classes. Who will establish that connection? In general, if you don't have any containers, right? If you implement classes this way, consider here I have a class controller, class A. It have a method. Okay, A method, Okay, and from this A method I want to call another class B. If you consider this like a business class, here I have business class method, B method, and I have class D or class C. This is my DAO. I have C method. Now when you want to call from one class to another class, when you want to call from one class to another class, or if you want to execute A method, B method and C method in a chain, what we need to do, we'll be going to write a main method here. We'll be going to write a main method here. We'll be going to write a main method in another class, a class application, class app, and from here we call the main method. Here in main method, you can create a class object, a equal to new a, and to call a class method, a dot a method. So when you create this object, your object is ready, a class object is ready, and so that you can call a class methods. So when I do a dot method, a dot a class method, the request will go to this a method. From here, I want to call b class method. From here, I want to call b class method. So if you want to call b class method, you need to create b class object first. B equal to new b. Then we call b dot b class method. And same way b wants to call c, then you need to call. So from here, right, the request will go to b method now. And b class want to call c class. So here c class object we are going to create, and we call c dot c method. So now your B class also would able to call C class methods. This is in general we call, right, when you have a dependency of another methods, right? So I have my application will call class A method. This A method is having B class B method dependency, and this B class B method is having C class C method dependency. So this is how the request will flow will go in general. And here to call one class to another class, we are creating that particular class objects. So from my application class to call a class, first I'm creating a class object, then B class object to call B class method, to call C class method, C class object we are creating. So when you want to execute the request flow, we definitely need objects from one class to another class. If you want to make method calls, definitely we need objects of those classes. Now if you consider MVC, here I have controller. Controller is having, this is my controller. This controller is having dependency of the business class, and the business class is having dependency of DAO class. So if you consider, so here we are calling the B class methods by creating B class object, and C class methods by creating C class object. Why I'm creating C class object here in B class? Because my B class is having C class method dependency. So this method is having some code. That code I want to call from my B method. So that's why the C class C method is dependency for my B class B method. Now same way, this B method is dependency for my A class. A class A method is having this dependency. So that here I'm creating B class object and calling this method. So usually methods will be dependencies to our flow of execution. So when I submit some request data here, when I submit this request to satisfy our request, here controller need to do some kind of read operations, then it need to send it to business. So business need to do business operations here, right? And we do CRUD operations here. Finally, by passing once after business is done. So to call from one class to another class, we need definitely that class object here. So when I have to call another class method from controller, I want to call business. So business is dependency to my controller, right? From business to I want to call DAO. So DAO is dependency to my business. So if you see here, if you consider A as controller, this controller is having B class dependency, and B class is my business. So this A controller is calling business class method, and this business class is having a DO class dependency and creating that object here. So we are creating objects and calling that particular class methods. So in Spring, we have a container name called Ioc container. That container is going to take care of object creations. Okay, so if you see in this flow, my app is calling A class object, it is creating B class object, C class object. All the classes objects we are creating here. As we have three classes, three objects we are creating. A object, then next B object, then next C object. So this object creation you need not to do manually. Okay, you need not to do this objects creation manually. Ioc containers will create objects. Your Ioc containers will create objects. Ioc containers will create, your Ioc containers will able to create these objects. Okay, Ioc containers will create these objects. Okay, so Ioc containers are what? There is a bean factory, and there is one more class, application context. So the bean factory is we call it as core container, and advanced container, application context is advanced container. This is core container and we call it as advanced container. We have two containers. Again, these two containers are simple Java classes. Okay, when we say containers in general terminology, containers are like your Tomcat or WebLogic, those servers we call it containers. Servlet container and DJB containers they will have. So whereas in Spring we have the containers in the form of Java classes only, bean factory and application context. These classes are capable, to create your objects. Whatever classes you implement for your class, for your application, all these classes objects will be created by your containers only. All these classes objects will be created by your containers only. They can able to manage your objects. This class object you can create, this class object also create, this class object also you can create. Whatever number of classes you have, all that objects you can create by using this Ioc containers only. These Ioc containers are capable to create objects. Now, anyway, it will create object, but when I need that object, so I'm removing this dependency here. So your Ioc container, when it is capable to create this object, you don't need to create that object directly here. You don't need to create this object directly here, as your Ioc is capable to create that objects. Okay, your Ioc is creating, but how this class will get that object access? Okay, so my app class is having A class dependency, A class reference I need here. Object creation, let's say if it is done by Ioc container, who will provide this reference? Into this reference, who will provide your object? So for that thing, what we do, we create that so and so class dependency references here with some setter methods or constructors. Okay, with some setter method or constructor, we create the dependency class references here. Okay, so we create that class dependencies here, A class dependency with some setter method. So when you put a dependency using setter method, already my container is creating object, right? Already my container is creating object by using the setter methods. By using the setter methods into your references, whatever references you created, into B class reference B object using the setter method, into C class reference C object using the setter method, into A class reference your A class object using the setter method, it can able to inject the objects. Okay, so your containers are capable to create objects. Once after creation of each object, A class object, B class object, C class object, once after creation of your objects, it would able to inject them one into each other. Otherwise we can't able to call other class methods. To call C class method, C object reference need to be passed here. Your Ioc container could able to do that. Your Ioc container can able to pass one class object into another class. Why we need that? Because you need to call that another class methods. So this is how we do the dependency injection. This is how we do the dependency injection. So using dependency injection, when you pass one class object into another class, right, that class would able to call your class methods. Then this A object is capable to call B class methods. Then B class is capable to call C class methods. So your IOC container is capable to create these objects first, and it can able to do dependency injections also. It will create your objects and dependency injections. Then what else required? Your objects are ready, and objects shake hand also happened. Means one object given into another object also. Just you need to call your first class method. Then this method execution will start, and it will go to the next class method. From there it will go to another class method. Okay, so using IOC you could able to do this. All your classes, whatever you implement using Spring, right, all that Spring classes objects, this is how it will create, and it will do the dependency injection one into another when you have that particular class dependency. Okay, so yesterday we saw example how to create these objects, right? Here I have multiple classes. Okay, this is my controller class, simple objects I'm creating. I don't have even any dependency methods. Here is my controller, and I have one default constructor, and this is my business default constructor, DAO, and this is my util class. So just we will see how these objects are creating all these classes, right? All these classes we configured into Spring XML file just by using bean tag. Using bean tag, you need to configure your classes. Okay, you need to configure your classes with IDs. So my controller class ID is C, business class ID is B, and DO class ID is D, and connection pool utility I have connection pool ID. And why we mention this scope is singleton? Because request can come any number of times, right? Here users can hit this A class 1000 times also. Your A class methods can be hit any number of times from presentation. I don't need multiple objects. One single object would be enough for me. So in that case, you need to mention your scope singleton. So only one object will be created. Okay. So I have my bean classes, which means the pozo classes, and all that pozo classes I configured here. Now load this into your IOC container. So the bean factory is one IOC container. The bean factory is one IOC container. So first you need to read your XML and you need to load it into bean factory. So this bean factory is lazy container. Immediately it will not create any objects. When you try to run, it just loaded your XML file. But no object has been created yet. So if object created, the constructor statements would have printed here, but no object created. So whenever you want to create any particular class object, right, either C or B or D or CP, by using these IDs, you need to call them. Whenever you call them using their IDs, factory dot get bean. If you pass C here, then your container will understand, okay, he need controller class object. It will create only controller object. Student controller object only created. If you want all the objects, you need to call get bean for all. C business class, and we have DO class. What is DO class? Dependency reference D, and connection pool CP. So when we call all these beans using get bean, your container will create these objects. As I said, it is singleton, right? Even if you call this get bean for multiple times also, only one object will be created. See, only one time this object created, controller object and business and DO and your connection pool. Still we are calling here multiple times because the scope is singleton. We are saying one object is sufficient for me. Let's change your controller object to prototype. Only controller object I am changing into prototype. Now run this. I called controller for 3 times. 1, 2, 3. And the remaining also I'm calling 3 times. But those are singletons. Open your console and see student controller object 1 time, business object 1 time, student DO 1 time, and connection pool. Again, 2 more student controller objects created. Overall, 3 objects created for controller. The reason the controller object scope is prototype, which means if 10 users request 10 controller objects, if 20 users request 20 controller objects, because it is prototype. For every user request, it will create one new object. If you make it singleton, again controller object also only one object. Basically, singleton is recommended. Okay, in Spring, singleton is recommended. You need not to change scopes. Okay, mostly 99.99% in your application, you are not going to change your scopes. Okay, you are not going to change your scopes. Always the default scope is singleton. Okay, for that one, you don't need to configure even the scope here. You can remove it. By default, the scope is singleton. By default, the scope is singleton. Even you need not to configure. And as I said, right, you need not to worry about the scope, because always in Spring we maintain singleton scope only for our objects. That's how we utilize our server space, very less space for objects, and we will execute user request in a faster way. Yeah, so this is how bean factory will create object. So the bean factory is lazy. Bean factory is lazy container until you call get bean method. It will not create any object. It will not create any object until you call get bean method. It will not create any object because it is lazy. Whereas application context, if you use advanced container application context, when you try to load your XML file, immediately it will try to create all the objects. Even you need not to call get bean method. All the objects created at the time of loading your XML file itself. So this factory, this application context container is a very advanced container. It is very advanced container. Okay, it is very advanced container. So using this advanced container, we generally implement our applications. So from this example, what we understand is objects can be created by IOC containers. Okay, your application objects, all your application objects can be created by your IOC containers, either a bean factory or application context. Using bean factory or application context, you can create objects. Okay, objects I created. What next? You should able to call the methods, right? You should able to call methods. I have a method here in student controller. I have a method public void call controller. I have a method here call controller. Okay, I have a call controller method or start car. Consider I have a start car method. Start car method calling. So how to call the start car method? You need to get the student controller object and you need to call it. So either it's advanced container or core container. Here we are getting our controller object, right? Using that object, you could able to call it. So my controller class is having start car method. I want to call that. So let's use this advanced container and get your object. As already object created by your container, right? Ask for the object. Ask a container, provide me my student controller object. It will provide you your controller object. Get your controller object here. Okay, so this is one style. Using ID you can get your object, or else using class name also you can get your object. So if it is ID, you need to do typecasting. So this way also you can ask. You can ask get bean of student class. You can ask there is a class in your configuration. The class name is student controller. Give me that object. So this way also you can call. In any approach, you can get your object and call controller dot start car. Okay. So container created object, that object you are getting and you are calling start car method. See this start car method calling. All the objects created and one of which object is controller. I'm getting my controller object and calling a method, and that method statement is printing here start car method called. Okay, my start car method is called. Now similar way, I have multiple methods in my business and other classes also. In business also consider I have one method public void start engine. Consider here you have one method start engine system.out.println start engine method calling. And similar way, I have a DAO, put one method here, public void start AC. Start AC method calling. And I have one more method in utility class, public void use fuel. Use fuel petrol method calling. Okay, so I have multiple methods. In here I have use fuel method, here I have start AC method, and here I have start engine method. In my controller I have start car method. If you want to call all that methods, you need to get all that objects. So get that objects here. Okay, get bean student controller, get student business object, get your business object, student DAO, get your DAO object, and connection pool utility. Connection pool util. This is my class CP. Now if you want to call that particular class methods, as like controller I have start car method, for business I have start engine method, and for my DAO I have start AC method, and for my util connection pool use fuel method I have. So this is how you can call your, once you get the objects, you know how to call that methods. I got the object, I got each and every class object using getBean method, then I'm calling my methods. So here start car and start engine, start AC, use petrol. All these methods are calling here. All these methods are calling. So using my container, I could able to create these objects. So whatever the objects container created, I can use that container created objects to call my methods. Okay, my container is creating objects, and using that object, I could able to call these methods. Here, if you see, we are calling these methods. Controller method I'm calling here, business also I'm calling here, DAO also I'm calling here, and my connection pool also I'm calling here from my application class. But in general, the application flow should go this way. So when I submit a request from presentation or my view, the request should go to controller first. Controller should able to call business, and business should able to call DAO, and DAO should able to use your connection pools, and it should able to talk with databases. So here I don't want call this start engine, start AC, start use fuel from here. I don't want. From where I want to call? From start car, I want to call engine. I wanted to call start engine here. I want to call start engine here. So for that one, you need an object. For that one, you need an object. Which object? Student business object. Student business object you need. So that you need to create object. Then you can call this business object dot start engine. And now from start engine, I want to call. From start engine, I want to call start AC. Start AC is there in DAO. So student DAO object you need to create here to call start AC. And AC, to start this AC, it need to use some fuel. So I want to call connection pool utility to call use fuel. Now when I call here my application, when I call my application start car, now I need not these objects because I need only controller class start car method. That method is going to call other objects. I called start car. Now see what happened. When I call start car, before calling start car itself, my IOC container created all 4 objects. Controller created, business created, DAO created, and connection pool object also created. And I called my start car method. And when I call this start car method, there the output statement is printing. Then again it is creating one more object, student business object. Because we are creating it again. We are creating it again here. This object. That's why after printing the statement, once again student business object is creating here. And using that object, we are calling start engine method. So the start engine method is calling again. There we are creating a student DO object again. And we are calling start AC. Start AC statement printing here. Then it is creating one object, connection pool object. Once again, connection pool object created. So then where we are utilizing the objects which are created by IOC? We created these objects again and again and again. Since you are calling start car 100 times, if you call, it will create this object again and again 100 times. Then what is the importance of Spring Singleton here? So you should not create these objects. You should not create these objects. In case if you have any dependency, ask IOC. IOC will serve for you. So you don't create any object. If you need this object, right, don't create on your own. Don't create on your own. Your IOC is capable to provide you this object. So for that thing, what you need to do, you need to create your required object reference here. Don't create object anyway. Object is created by your IOC container and it will supply to you. That input will be supplied to you. So you just need to put setter method to accept that input. That's it. You don't create any object. Whatever object container has, that object it will supply to you using the setter method. Now, if you go to start engine, here we are creating DO object. This object also you need not to create. Whatever object it is created, that object will supply to you set DO method. So you need to create your reference with a setter method. That's it. The object will be supplied from your IOC container. Start AC. Here also you need not to create this object directly. Create it as a reference and put a setter method. Set CP. Okay. Now your IOC is capable to supply these objects to you. So which object I need to supply into the student DAO? A connection pool object I need to supply because this is my dependency. My start AC method is having use fuel method dependency. I want to call connection pool method use fuel. So this is my dependency. Create your dependency as a variable here with a setter method. Now you could able to supply that. How can you do that? Go to your XML. Go to your XML. My DO class is having dependency of connection pool. Your IOC container should supply that object. As your IOC container is creating this object, this container is already created this connection pool object. You can supply that object here by calling setter method. So here you need to call setter method of your DAO. Which setter method you need to call in your DAO class? You have this set CP. You need to call this set CP method here, and you need to pass your connection pool object. Okay, you need to do this. So, but we should not write Java code here. Instead of that, right, to call your setter method, use a tag name called property. And what is your setter method name? Set CP. Put that set CP here. Okay, set CP and pass your dependency. Okay, set CP. Use small c. Okay, this variable reference name we can use. And you are calling set CP method, and the input is connection pool. You need to inject this connection pool reference. So by using a reference, you can pass this here. Okay, so my DO class is having dependency of connection pool method. So that's why I injected my I want this connection pool object here. This connection pool object I can inject, or I can pass, or I can supply from my XML using this setter method. So this is how you can call your setter method. So now whatever object Spring created, right, this connection pool object, it will supply that object here. This object will be supplied here into your student DAO setter method. Okay, good. And my business class also having a dependency of DAO. So for that one I created DAO reference with set DAO. Similar way, right, you need to call set DAO method here. You need to call set DAO and you need to pass your DAO reference here. DAO reference is D. So instead of writing Java code, you write property set DAO, call set DAO method and pass reference of your DAO. DAO reference is D. That's it. I supplied my DAO object into business. So here that will be supplied. Now my controller class also having dependency of business class. Now this business class I should supply into controller. So this is my business object. I need to supply here. So for that one I need a setter method set business. So you need to call set business here. You need to call set business here. You need to call set business here, and you should pass your business object. So for that one, instead of writing Java code, use this property, call set business and pass your reference. My reference is B, business class reference. That's it. Instead of hard coding my objects, what I did now, whatever objects container creating, I am requesting container to inject them here. Inject my connection pool into DAO, inject my DAO into business, and inject my business into controller. Now when I call this controller method, as already injection happened by your Ioc container, this object will be available to you. If you need the proof, write some SOP statement, dependency injection happening in controller. Dependency injection is happening in business. Dependency injection is happening in DAO also. Okay, now when I call from my application, now when I call start car will execute this statement, and it could able to call start engine of business class also. So when it calls start engine, it will execute this statement, and it could able to call DAO class start AC also. From there it will execute this statement, and it could able to call use fuel also. Okay, this is how your method flow will be executed. See, okay, see what happened. Student controller object created, student business object, student DAO object, connection pool object created, then dependency injection happening. Dependency injection happening into DAO, which means for DAO it given dependencies, and for business it given dependency, and for controller also it given dependency. Now your controller is able to capable to call business, your business is able to call DAO, your DAO is able to call connection pool, because all these dependency injections happened. This object injected here, this object injected here, and this object injected here. Now when I call start car comfortably calling start engine is able to calling start AC, AC is able to calling use fuel. So this is how your IOC container will create objects for all your classes. It will create objects for your all application classes, and each class will have other class dependencies, right? That dependencies also it will supply. Okay, so these are the main features of Spring. So you on top of these features, they implemented many features. They expanded Spring with many features by using this tool, by creating objects and doing dependency injection. There are a lot of features implemented in Spring. Okay, any doubts so far? Guys, you able to follow?
Yeah, we are able to follow.
Yeah. So basically the context is here. I wanted to show you how IOC containers will do this stuff. When I say Spring IOC is having containers like servers, those servers are capable to do this, right? So now you must realize your IOC container is capable to do this. It could able to create objects, and one object it could be able to supply into another object. Your IOC container could able to create these objects, and it can able to inject this object one into another class. Why this dependency injection is required? If there is no dependency injection, then no use of created object. You created object, and if you couldn't able to supply into another class, then what is the use of that object? So your container is creating object for doing dependency injection only. For creating for doing dependency injections only, so that objects we can supply wherever we need, and we can execute the methods. Okay, so developer comfortably can leave this object creation part and dependency injection part to your IOC container by just doing these configurations, in XML file. And we need to do this if I have like I want to implement a application with 1000+ classes, 1000 controller classes, 1000 business, and 1000 DAO, and many utility classes. Do you need to do all this stuff in XML file by creating all these beans and dependency injections? Really not required. When we go through advanced concepts, right? This structure they changed, as it is little difficult for our developers to manage all this through XMLs. They given annotations also. Using annotations when you write the code, right? You need not to even look into this XML file. You can throw this XML file away. You need not to use this XML file. Everything you can monitor through annotations also. Those are very simple. Instead of spending much time on this XML, we can focus on our code only. Annotations will take care. Okay, that much advanced concepts we have. We go through all that concepts one by one. Okay, do let me know if you have any. Yeah, many, right? On this context, I'm not going to tell that, but yeah, many features like auto wiring we have, stereotype annotations we have, auto configurations we have. This thing, whatever configuration stuff you are doing here, we do through auto configurations. Okay, recordings are available. Must be.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
So how did you be that class controller in the beginning? So this class student controller. So second line, 5 lines, 5th line, sir.
Which one?
5th, sir. Public class student controller.
See, this is not real controller. As I mentioned, these are simple POSO classes. Excuse me. If you want to get the controller behavior, you need to put some controller annotations here. I'm not going to tell that now, but that is part of Spring Boot and Spring MVC. We are going step by step. Okay. I don't
No,
want
sir, how you
confuse you
created
guys.
that class student controller from the file?
Create it as
She's
a simple
asking
Java class.
the ID
Oh,
class creation.
ID class creation. Okay, I mean in application class you are saying here. See,
No,
whatever
sir.
classes I have.
Package after package, sir. How did you make the class from the file? I did not get that, sir.
Yeah, I understand. Actually, her doubt is how to create class. So just
Yes.
Yes.
right click and go to class. Create a class, simple class, right? Name anything. Okay, your controller.
Okay.
Name anything, enter. That's it. Your controller is ready. You must have practiced some on Eclipse, right? Before. If not, this is how you create object. If you want to create class, use class. If you want to create interface, use create interface. For enums, use enum. For package, you can use package. Okay. Just right click on package, go to new and create it. Okay. Will that be fine?
Naveen, are you using Spring 2.x jars or 3.x?
For this, I use Spring 3x jars. Actually, we have current version Spring 4, 5 also. There are many things are duplicated and many things are added. But go with any version. IOC, I mean, core module will not change. Whatever core concepts we have. So hereafter,
Yes.
right, we will use each version and what are the major differences on that version. We will see. Use any jars, right? As I have all your mail IDs, today what I will do, I'll send this example and the jar files also. So just load this application into your Eclipse and add that jar as dependencies and you can practice. You can create some more classes here and you can configure them in XML and C. Okay. And this is not the, I mean, as this is demo session, I'm giving just a glimpse of it. Okay. So, but once we started with the regular sessions, I'll go each and everything in depth. Okay. What are all types of dependency injections we have? What are all types we can inject if your class is having primitives as a dependencies? If a class required a name as a dependency or a collection as a dependency through setter or constructor or using annotation. Okay, there are many concepts. Okay, we'll go each and every concept one by one without confusion. I just need your patience, that's all. Okay, please conform to the regular session and get the actual link. Okay, so we'll start actual content from here. Okay, I hope you guys will register. So yeah, you can they must be printed. Yeah, you can see the email that they are sending. So this is the email, right? For everyone, they are sending the demo link and the fee details also they sent, right? So their bank details and the fee we did not mention here.
I think fees is mentioned. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
After
Fees will
course
mention, right?
content.
Yes. So this is the fee. You can use this account details. Okay. Use this account details or use Google Pay or Phone Pay on this number. Once done with that, just send the screenshot, payment screenshot to them. They'll send you a regular link. This demo link might be expired by tomorrow. So thereafter, we'll continue on regular link. Okay. So if someone is new in this session, share your email ID. Today examples I'll forward. And you can see this videos, right? Last 3 session videos available here. Last 3 demo sessions. Today's session also will be available on this link. Okay. Just these are demo links. Okay, need not to worry. Once we start with regular sessions, you will get regular session videos through Drive for lifetime access. Okay. You will get regular examples, code examples, and the soft copy, whatever PPTs I have, I'll share along with the videos. Okay, so that you will not miss anything. So yeah, Kunal, email ID. Okay, I'll send today examples. Okay, just go through it and confirm to the regular session, and by tomorrow, right, we'll start. I don't want to continue this demos. we'll continue regular session from tomorrow. Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Any questions?
Could you please explain again this example?
Okay. So do others wants to continue? If you want, you can stay, or else you can drop.
I have already paid and I want to continue this course. Please explain again this example.
Sure, sure. Just a minute. Just a minute. Okay. Now you guys able to see? Yeah. So basically, I was talking about Ioc container. When we say about a container is like your server. So when we say server, here we have. Let me show you Tomcat. So Tomcat is a server. So when you build a web application, we build web application and we drop that application into this web apps. Okay, var file we deploy here. Once deploy our var file into Tomcat, we go to bin and there is a start command. We start it. Do you know that? So when you call the start method, your container will start creating objects for your classes, whatever classes you implement. It will create objects, and then when you request a hit from browser, it will execute your classes. Okay, it will manage all your servlets. If it is a Tomcat, it will manage all your servlets which you deploy here. Similar way, your IOC also could able to manage your classes, not only servlet. Here we are not talking about servlet. Okay, so all the classes for application development, right? You are going to write controllers, business, and DO classes. Usually we will write the three layers: controller layer, business layer, and DO layer. So here I have controller class and business class, DO class, and some other utility classes also I have. Consider you have 4 classes. Now these classes objects are going to create by your IOC, like how Tomcat is going to create, like how the Tomcat server is going to create servlets objects and servlet lifecycle, how it is managing, right? Your classes objects also going to created by your IOC container. To create these objects, you need to configure your objects, your classes into Spring XML file using bean tag. In this bean tag, you need to configure your classes. Like servlet classes, how you configure in web.xml file. You need to configure your classes first here. That's it. When you configure your classes here, and when you load this XML file, once you configure these classes, whatever classes you implemented, once you configure them into your XML file, and when you load it into your Ioc container, when you load it into Ioc container, it will create all your objects. When I start this main method, right, the next line execution is your Ioc line execution. Your Ioc will start. Your inversion of controlling server. This is your Ioc server. This is your Ioc server. This server will start, and it will load your all classes. It will load all your student app.xml, whatever XML we have, right? All these classes it will load, and it will create objects for them. So first thing, it could able to create objects for your classes. Your container, your Ioc container could able to create objects for your all your classes. That part is done. When you load, it will create. Now I want to call one class method. Now I want to call my controller class method here. Start car method I have. Usually users will call users will call from view to controllers. From view pages to controllers they will call first. So when a request wants to call controller will call its subsequent methods, the dependency methods. So I got a request from the view to my controller. So here I am calling my controller start car method. I'm calling my controller class start car method. This start car method should be able to call other class methods like business class method, and business should be able to call DAO. DAO should be able to call another class method. So when you want to call another class methods, you need not to create that objects directly here. In first scenario, what I've shown you, we created objects directly, but you need not to do that. As Ioc is creating, using this dependency injection concept, you can able to inject them. So here, my connection pool implementation class is having dependency to my DAO, so that I am injecting this object here using setter method. In DAO class, I created a connection pool class dependency. Okay, connection pool class dependency, and here I have a setter method. Through that setter method, when I call this, right, it will call the setter method of this DAO, and it will pass this here. And this DAO object, I have dependency in my business class. So I created my DAO reference with setter method, and I am injecting that here. And I have this business class dependency into my controller. Okay, so I created this DAO class business class dependency with setter method. I'm injecting here, so that other classes are available to each other. Pool class is available in DAO, DAO is available in business, business is available in controller. So when I call controller class method, I can able to happily call another class methods which are already injected. So that's how we are calling. When we call start car, the start car method is able to call. Start car is calling start engine calling start AC calling use field. So this is how one method could able to call another method, so that user purpose is solved. The user submitted a request from you, his purpose is solved by calling all the methods. Okay, so this is very high level example for Ioc. Okay, we will discuss one more time. If you didn't understand also, should be fine. We will discuss one more time with a simple examples. Did you understand here? What is the purpose of Ioc?
Yes.
Yeah, Vaibhav, we will go with very small examples once the session starts, right? So just to make you understand the context, right, I given this much classes and dependency injections. Okay, don't worry, we'll go one by one with a simple POJO classes and simple configurations. Okay.
Okay.
So if all good, we'll drop for today and we'll connect tomorrow. Okay. So Good day, guys. Then bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you, Naveen. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Bye.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, good afternoon, good day. Bye.